Mayor Bragg, congratulations on 12 great years serving Murfreesboro.
Well, thank you, John. I think as I look back, there have been a number of people that have made this last 12 years successful for Murfreesboro, and I'm happy to have shared my part in it, but I really think it goes to our taxpayers, our citizens, our business owners, and our city staff, and those folks that work with our community day in, day out providing services. So I'm going to give them the thanks for making me look good.
I understand. Well, you come from a great family. Your father, Representative John Bragg, served for 30 years in the Tennessee General Assembly and was one of the outstanding leaders down there. Your brother is a local judge serving the community, and it's my pleasure to know and work for your grandfather, Minor Bragg, when he published the Rutherford Courier. So you have a great heritage.
Well, it's funny. My mother had a son that was a judge and one that was a mayor, and I think she looked at us just like we were little boys running in the street, worried about us and proud about us in the same fashion. But that family background didn't hurt. People in Nashville were very nice when I went down to the legislature or dealt with state departments. And you know the feeling, having been a state representative for so long. People are very cordial to you, sometimes even when they disagree with you.
Absolutely. Well, I enjoyed some of that, as a matter of fact, as the successor to your father in the House of Representatives. That gave me a step up, as a matter of fact.
Well, District 48's a special place for me, too, and it's interesting that the legislature has looked at our state and been so beneficial, I think, to cities and counties, and I hope that persists in the future.
You're just finishing up 3 terms as mayor, 4-year terms. Any particular reason you decided to hang it up or go home, if you will?
Well, I guess it just became time. I'm 67 years old. I felt that we had 2 excellent folks on council who wanted to be mayor and were interested in running, and I thought, well, let's just see what happens and maybe let them go ahead and run and take over. It's been a tremendous learning experience being mayor. Of learning, I guess, about water and sewer, about electric, about solid waste, about stormwater, reuse water, and that's just the water things that you have to worry about. Road construction, parks, and dealing with taxpayers on the front line. That's what our city employees do so well. And so it was a great learning experience, and I felt like maybe it was just time to let somebody else take over. Maybe spend a little more time on the golf course and with my family, and really turn it over maybe to a newer generation.
I understand. And as you say, there comes a time when it's time to move on.
In essence, I think you're right. I'd been in the printing business, sold the business, worked for the company for a couple of years and retired. I retired out of the Air National Guard. So I really, the interesting thing about the opportunity to be mayor was that a learning experience. Which I think broadened my horizons and certainly gave me a great appreciation for what a city does, how it impacts a region, and fortunately during those years our cooperation with Middle Tennessee State University, with Rutherford County government, and with our state leaders, I think had all led to a very successful and formidable 12 years for our community.
And the city and the county, as you suggest, have been great partners with Middle Tennessee State University over the years, and that is so very significant.
Well, it is, and the university has embraced the community that it resides in. We don't have that town gown problem that you read about in other communities, and fortunately, so many of our students come to Murfreesboro, they like it, and they stay here. And you just get the feeling that there's a real comradeship between the university, their staff, the faculty, the students, and our townsfolk because they're so connected.
Is there any particular achievement or accomplishment that you would point to as outstanding during the 12 years, more than others?
Well, I mentioned that our councils have worked very well together. You know, we make group decisions. The mayor is not the king. We've got 7 folks that have to agree or we don't get anything done. So that's been very important to me. 2 things that come to mind real quick was our cooperation with MTSU on their athletic facilities, which increased our availability for regional sporting events, Spring Fling and other, and I hope Conference USA events to come. The other thing was, and I don't think people ever think about this, we had so many railroad crossings, what we call at grade, and the city has built above grade crossings to get people over the railroad tracks without having that safety issue. So from a public safety point of view, I think that's a good accomplishment. And I guess the last thing would be our most recent purchase of the medical clinic to become a new police headquarters. That's something that's going to be 20, 30, 40 years down the road, a great buy for the taxpayers in Murfreesboro. It gets that project underway without having to go find another site and go through zoning and all those things. But it gets our police department back into a centralized location with the square footage they need, the resources they need, and probably save the taxpayers maybe up to $10+ million over what it would cost to start from ground zero on a new facility.
Oh, that's a significant move, I would say.
Huge. It's huge.
Yeah. You mentioned the bridges. You have a huge bridge that's just about to be completed, I believe, over the railroad.
That's exactly right. The largest bridge probably in Murfreesboro that's out on the Joe B. Jackson Parkway. When I first got to be mayor, we opened up that interchange, and now we're completing that loop from I-24 around to 231, and that's going to be a time saver for a lot of our residents and for county residents too. So I appreciate the cooperation not only with Rutherford County in building that bridge and that road project, but with the state's Department of Transportation.
You mentioned bridges. There's another huge bridge construction that is underway.
There is, and I didn't bring it up, but that might not be a good time to be mayor while that project's underway, but for gosh, it seems like 20 or 30 years we've talked about that bridge over Broad Street, and that is going to be such a wonderful amenity after completion. It's not going to be fun during the middle of it with a year and a half to relocate utilities and a year and a half to build the bridge.
So it's a total of about 3 years before it'll be completed.
I think it'll be a 3. So Shane McFarland is really going to get bridge over Broad Street in his vocabulary, let's put it that way.
You're leaving him a great challenge and for his
Well, he can always look back and say, well, that was that other mayor that did that. I'm just trying to make it better now. It reminds me of when the city built the new water towers that were out of concrete construction, 2 million gallons. And the first time I saw one of those going up in the neighborhood, I thought, oh gosh, that's terrible. But then I looked under the sign and it said, Mayor Richard Reeves.
So you didn't have to take credit for that.
That's exactly right.
Well, speaking of that, any disappointments during your administration? Anything you'd do differently if you had a chance to do it over again?
You know, we've just been so fortunate. I certainly wouldn't want our residents and business owners to have to go back through the Great Recession again. It really wasn't anything that we caused locally. It was a national and international impact. That freezing of the city's budget, the freezing of the hiring, you hate to go through those hiccups, but I certainly believe our city administration did a good job there. I wish we had not had the difficulty over the extension of the runway at our Murfreesboro Airport. It wasn't going to change the type of aircraft, wasn't going to change anything about it, just make it a little safer and give our pilots a little more of a safety zone. So a couple of those things came up during the time, but generally speaking, I think we've been very fortunate, and if there's been any disappointments, it's possibly because of the lingering effects of just waiting for projects to come to fruition. It seems to take so long now to get everybody on board while we build a road or where we go for a park or where we get something done. And that's a little frustrating sometimes, but after 12 years as mayor, I think I understand now you just have to wait for good things to happen.
To show that there's a change in the economy, we have 2 hotels and a third one, I believe, about to begin in the Avenue area, so that shows that things have changed and are moving on.
1,000 new rooms will come online here in the next year, year and a half. The other thing has been the kind of the change to apartment living that we're seeing in Murfreesboro. With the mobility of our workforce and the fact that we've had so many new jobs come into the town, the apartment living has become very attractive. The mortgage business is a lot more difficult than it was during the 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and so people find that apartment living is something that they want to undertake, and so that demographic change of not having the home ownership but having more people in apartments. And it's interesting, the city makes more money off the property tax revenue on an apartment than they do on a single family dwelling, so hopefully they'll help us flatten out and keep our tax rate where it's been for the last 15 years. No tax increase.
And that is an amazing story there.
It is, and frankly, for many years we heard growth didn't pay for itself. Well, I think we found out that growth does. It's kept our property owners from having to pay a bigger bill, and it's made our regional shopping very attractive, where people come and spend their money here.
And speaking of regional shopping, the Avenue has been a great addition to the community.
It's so different now than it was 12 years ago. If you think about the approach to the city off Manson Pike, a kind of land that was fairly fallow, but good property owners, but just kind of rough-looking land. And then with the city purchasing the 400 acres for the Gateway area, and the Lane Farm selling, and part of the Corlew Farm selling, and that 100-acre site coming up to where we see tremendous possibilities. People enjoy coming to Murfreesboro, surface parking, surface shopping, and then have that conference center, which is great for all our statewide and regional organizations.
Let's talk about the educational system. Murfreesboro had an outstanding educational system serving the community. I think we're very fortunate in that regard.
Well, I think so too, and I think if you think back to when we had an appointed school board and now we have an elected school board, I mean, there doesn't seem to be any hiccup, or it's just been, we've been very fortunate in order, number one, sharing revenues with the county for our K-6 system, and how attentive that school board has been, along with the two school directors who were there during my tenure. The teachers, the enthusiasm, the way we've maintained the properties, and the way you just seem to understand the children are learning and they're in a great and safe environment has really been beneficial, I think, across the community.
And I enjoyed being a part of that appointed school board for many years and seeing the community grow and develop. Any other new schools on the horizon other than the one school that's under construction?
Well, we have the Overall Creek School that's underway, and hopefully that'll save us for another 2 or 3 years. And of course, we're paying off the John Pittard and Scales Elementary that were built during my tenure, so those buildings will be paid off fairly quickly. I don't know where we'll go from there, but we'll still maintain that system. I don't see that our residents have any disenchantment with our city schools, and I certainly appreciate the school director and those administrators and teachers and parents who work together with that school board to make that a great system.
I guess you've sort of answered this question. In the past, there have been talk about merging the two school systems and having one system as opposed to the two. Do you see any reason for doing that?
We would certainly look at that if the county was interested in taking the system over, but I believe the county likes the system that they have. They understand it. They do very well, and I'm sure our 7,000 to 8,000 students that are in the city system like that homogeneous grouping right around the city of Murfreesboro, and our city government has been able to overfund that system about $5 million for the last 6, 7 years. And as long as the county has so many students, I'm sure they're content to let Murfreesboro maintain that K-6 system by itself.
By overfunding, you mean the city's put additional money over and beyond state appropriation?
Right, and above what the county puts in and what our sales tax brings in. So we've been able to overfund that $5 million, and I think that's been helpful.
Very helpful. Let's talk about police and fire. We have two excellent departments here. You mentioned the new headquarters for the police department, but I think the police and fire departments have served the community wonderfully well.
Public safety is 2/3 of our budget. We want to make sure that we have the resources, that our folks are trained, that we have the equipment that we need. It's amazing. I think the last fire truck we bought cost $750,000. And the taxpayers have been very generous to both our public safety departments, and I think our public safety, both the chief and our fire and rescue department chief, have been great stewards. Those frontline people are out there, they look good, they act very well, and they take great care of our city. The interesting thing, I think, is you've seen with the codes enforcement that we're not really in the fire business anymore unless it's in the old traditional downtown area or unattended cooking, that we're not seeing the electrical fires that we used to see. So our fire department has really gone on to the rescue business, so we respond to automobile accidents and other events, And then we're going to undertake the basic life-saving services in addition to first responder. So our fire department has taken on a tremendous set of new disciplines and new roles, and I want to point them out, that fire and rescue department, and how they're always aggressively looking for ways to help our citizens. So we've been very fortunate in the public safety area.
That's quite a change, quite an addition into the fire and rescue. When an emergency call goes out for the emergency medical service, the fire department simultaneously answers that call? Is that the way that works?
They do, and the 911 dispatcher will make that decision, and because we have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, around-the-clock fire and rescue department, and they're in the truck and ready to go within 2 minutes, and their response time is very quick, even after or sometimes before when our police department arrives. So it's been very beneficial to visitors, residents, and our taxpayers alike.
Murfreesboro and Rutherford County have become quite a medical center for this area. We are fortunate having the beautiful new St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital and other medical facilities here.
I've always thought we've been favored, I guess, because of our medical community. And even though the education and medical don't tie together, they're both the big ringleaders, so to speak, in our whole county. And so that new facility, it was tremendous. It came at a great time. If it had been 2 years later, 3 years later, perhaps we wouldn't have had that. But when we found out that our old center was kind of hemmed in, couldn't grow, and was difficult to find really for a big regional facility, the new location just made sense. And I'm very pleased with those administrators, those people on the staff, and those people who occupy and service in the medical office buildings that are close by. So I think the recognition from outside our community with the St. Thomas system, the Ascension Health system, of realizing the opportunities that we have here in Rutherford County was very beneficial to the city.
One thing that many communities don't have and would like to have, I'm sure, is something like the Christy Houston Foundation. That has been such an integral part of much of the development and growth in the community, not just in medical, but in otherwise.
Well, just to mention a few, you know, Barfield Crescent Park came about because of Christy Houston. We also had our facilities across the board that have been great for our community. The Salvation Army, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, a lot of things. I wish we had 10 foundations like Christy Houston, but I'm so thankful for the one that we have.
For those who may not know, Christy Houston Foundation came from money from the sale of Rutherford Hospital to the Baptist Hospital and the St. Thomas system, I believe, a number of years ago, initially about $45 million, as I recall.
Well, it was interesting, the choice made at the time to put it into a foundation as opposed to selling it to a for-profit hospital
which was
group,
about to happen.
Which was about to happen, and then the city would have gotten the money. Yeah. And this way a foundation gets it, and it becomes more or as equally community-minded.
The Commonwealth Fund of New York, as I recall, funded the original Rutherford Hospital, and that money came from that initially, and it's been such a great part of this community's growth and development.
That in our health department, and that was because we were underserved medically. So the addition of those facilities really had helped our medical facilities grow.
Yeah, been a great combination. You mentioned the recreation department, mentioned the Barfield Park, but we've had a tremendous recreation program in this community over the years.
Well, interestingly too, we've embraced new sports as well as to maintain
like
the
soccer?
old ones. Soccer, we've got 11 soccer fields and a neighborhood park on the north side. We have used the VA's facilities for a kind of a startup golf course. We've built a new par 3 golf course, 6 holes right next to Old Fort. We have Old Fort, and we've rebuilt Old Fort, I guess in 2005, 2006. Then when you add the wilderness area out at Barfield Crescent Park, you look at McKnight Park, we're making some improvements there. Now when you look at the area around Oakland's, 1,100 acres our Parks and Recreation Department takes care of, and then provides recreational opportunities for families, for youngsters, for teens, the between group, and for our adult population. Rebuilt Patterson Park during my term, and also have made enhancements to what I call Water World out at Sportscom. So lots of things that we've been able to do and to give the taxpayer value for their money.
We mentioned the two bridges, roads and transportation, certainly a major part of our community and a major challenge, I guess, to the city government.
Well, it was funny, back when I was originally elected in 2002, the orange barrels were there and they haven't really come down. They've been moving around, I guess, is the way you look at it. So our city engineering department, our city transportation department, really unparalleled growth in those areas. If you think about nearly $200 million and more spent on roads in Rutherford County and around Murfreesboro in the last 12 years, really quite an effort, and everyone is to be commended for their patience and tolerance while we get those lane miles ready for their use of the motorists.
Which is part of the problem of growth, and with those orange barrels, I'd rather have this than the opposite.
Well, it is, and we started out with a period of time back in the 80s where we built access roads along the major thoroughfares, and we found they just don't work very well, and we still are burdened with a couple of those. So at some point in the future we'll have to deal with them. But I think if we can just get Middle Tennessee Boulevard finished out in front of the university.
Any projections on that?
No, thanks for asking. Braideville Pike, Thompson Lane, the bridge over Broad Street, and then we can go out to Highway 99 and get that 4-laned out toward Eagleville from Old Fort Parkway out across I-24 and out past the Cason Lane, St. Andrews area. And that'll help some of those urbanized residential areas out in the county when they come into the city to work and to shop.
How different, I guess, when Jennings Jones was mayor of Murfreesboro and they built Rutherford Boulevard,
right,
and folks wondered why in the world would you build a road out that far in the community.
Well, and even Northfield Boulevard, if you think about it, for many years was just 2 lanes, and the yards on the north side were very big, and the yards on the south side had a standard setback, and then we made that 4-lane, and that happened during the end of Joe B's term and when Richard was mayor. And we try to make those neighborhood friendly with sidewalks and grass strips and bike lanes. Sometimes that takes a little right of way that owners don't want along that road, but it certainly makes it enhance it for a sense of community and a commensive neighborhood.
Do you see us continuing to grow and develop like we have in the last few years?
As long as we continue to be an attractive, low-cost, low-tax state with good educational and medical facilities, I do, John. Mm-hmm. I don't think that you can stop that kind of thing as long as you're providing the job growth and you keep the property taxes where they are.
We haven't mentioned commercial or particular industrial development in the city of Murfreesboro.
The cooperative effort of our Rutherford County government and the other cities, Eagleville, Laverne, Smyrna, with Murfreesboro in a single Chamber of Commerce, and with the 12-year initiative known as Destination Rutherford, has really put us on the map. People who are in the consulting business, people in the engineering business, they know where Rutherford County is. And they know that we've got property, that we have infrastructure, that we have the resources to provide them not only the workforce, but the incoming workforce out of our high schools and MTSU. I think that's going to keep us very active in economic development for a long time. The low tax part of it, the centralized location, and the great job working in educational and medical facilities really all work together.
And we continue to search for a corporate headquarters here. You think that'll happen anytime soon?
Well, it is. When you're looking at a business location, they kind of look at a lot of things. And as other locations fill up, I think people are going to look more and more toward Rutherford County. So we hope that'll happen. Again, 12 years we've been working for that. We've missed on a couple, so I think that opportunity is still out there. And I think once the first one figures it out that this is going to be a great location, you know, Schwann Cosmetics is moving their headquarters here, and then Innovate Medical is coming down. So there's some regional interest, but we haven't located that one big first-timer yet.
How do you see Murfreesboro 50 years from now? What is it, 25 years from now? Maybe that's too far.
Well, it's
the way things change.
We have so much open land. number one. We have forward-looking taxpayers and residents and business owners. You know, business people want growth. They don't want to flatline and they don't want declining sales, they want growth. So when you have the university providing the workforce, when you have business owners who are forward-looking, as the destination Rutherford has shown us, when you have the land available. I mean, frankly, if you look at our road network and the fact that we've got 55 square miles in the city of Murfreesboro, but 618 square miles in the county, 40% of which is still very rural, I think there's some good things going to happen.
We're not the dairying center of the world anymore, but we're still a great place to be.
We still provide milk and yogurt, but they got to bring the milk in from somewhere else. So it's interesting how that paradigm shifts, but we're still a very attractive local marketplace for business to come and enjoy success.
Let's talk about city government and the council situation. Every year during election time for the council, the talk comes about having an at-large council or council representatives by district.
Right. The thing that I think we find more than anything is we've had so many folks move here from other areas, and they kind of bring their understanding of government that was like the government they knew where they used to be. So a full-time mayor versus a part-time mayor.
And by the way, for the benefit of those watching and listening, the mayor's job is a part-time job, correct?
Correct.
But you made it a full-time job in reality.
Well, in some weeks I did, and others you're always out in the community, you do that. But size probably doesn't make any difference. I think Jacksonville, Florida, Oklahoma City, Charlotte are all cities that have city manager form of government and part-time mayors and councils. So I think in many instances, and I'll say this kindly, Murfreesboro has been so fortunate that when you run for office, you've got to make up an issue and maybe try to assimilate somebody else's position on you. Our pension is virtually fully funded. Our city budget has grown without a tax increase. We have an at-large council, so let's have some from districts. We want to change our election date to coincide so we don't have to go to an election which we maybe don't know a lot of the people that are involved.
And that can save money too, can it?
Well, it does save some money, but out of a $120 million budget, $30,000 every 2 years is not a big expense. And if you can imagine, our city taxpayers are helping train our poll workers for elections to come, so that's not a bad on-the-job training opportunity. So I think a lot of the issues, we just have to look at how fortunate we've been in Murfreesboro. Budget's good, pension's good, council's working together, great cooperation with the local governments, county and cities, great cooperation with MTSU. So let's don't find anything bad, let's just improve on what we already have.
Tell us about your personal family. We talked about your father and your grandfather, you and Mrs. Murfreesboro.
Yeah, Jeannie picked up that moniker from one of the local newspapers, and as I'm retiring, she's going to retire also, so Ms. Murfreesboro can fall to another person, but she's enjoyed that 7.5 years of writing a weekly column, and the other thing is being able to travel and talk about that with her readers. And the other part of that has been, it's kept her connected as well as me, so I can learn what's on her mind by reading her articles just as well as she can possibly tell what's on my mind by seeing me on TV or listening on radio. But our son is in Florida teaching at a private academy and teaches digital media journalism. But John is the third, and he's in Florida. Ann is in Charlotte with our 2 grandchildren, Jean and Mary Malcolm. And then Beth works for our Rutherford County Boys and Girls Club. So the family is a little bit spread out, but we get to see each other. Ann was in town this weekend. And so we've been very fortunate to have that grouping, and especially to have those 2 grandchildren to look forward to.
We mentioned about you being in the printing business beforehand with a Courier Printing Company. Mention your education. You graduated at the University of Tennessee, as I recall.
I did. I went through all the 12 grades here in Murfreesboro, and my kindergarten was Miss Jeannie Nielsen, who is the Mitchell Nielsen School is named after Miss Jeannie.
She was a teacher when I was in school, but I had Mrs. Rogers instead of Miss Nielsen.
Yeah, well, it's funny, we've named our facilities after those people who were instrumental to all of us at a young age. Then went to training school, then campus school now, Hobgood, Central High School, and off to the University of Tennessee. Played in the band, got an ROTC, married the day I graduated, got commissioned in the service, started law school, learned how to argue with lawyers for about a year, and then went into the Air Force and came back to the printing business. And worked with my dad and business partners, and had a successful business in Murfreesboro for many years. And then in '88, we moved that down to Smyrna to get a little closer to our market in Nashville, and sold the business about 10 years later after merging with another Murfreesboro company, Lancer Printing Company. And that business now has been sold to R.R. Donnelly. So it's nice to see a legacy of the old newspaper.
Folks, I think of them.
Well, Donnelly does a lot of things. They're the largest printer in the country, and so it's interesting that, having seen consolidation in a lot of businesses, of seeing just something that your grandfather started ends up being a part of the largest printing operation in the country.
That's wonderful.
It is. It's very nice.
You mentioned being in the UT band. I remember one of my favorite stories you used to tell when the band director found out who your father was and the position he had in state government.
I was not a real good band member player. I was faithful, but I didn't play the horn very well. And one time we were practicing out on the field, and we run up and down the field. You just get out of breath. I had a big horn. I was in the practice for the alma mater, and I was just going honk, 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 because I was out of breath. We'd been running back and forth. And the band director, I just happened to be right at his foot in the UT. And he looked down at me and he stopped the band and he says, "Mr. Bragg, we don't need a baritone saxophone solo on the alma mater. You don't play." And I said, "Yes, sir, Dr. Julian, I won't play." So
Dr. J. Julian. Huh?
Yeah, I was pretty happy. I don't have to play. I was out of breath anyway. So he starts up the alma mater again, and I could see his little head kind of bob, and he looked down, he stopped the band again, and he looked down and he says, "Mr. Bragg, is your daddy still in the state legislature?" And I said, "Yes, sir, Dr. Julian." He says, "You play anything you want to." So somehow or other it became mindful to him that there was an appropriation involved somewhere down the line, and it might be a good thing to just leave me alone for a while. Yeah.
And Representative John Braggett's father, chairman of the Finance, Ways and Means Committee of the Tennessee House of Representatives, and longtime author of that budget, and a man who knew every integral part of that budget and every appropriation.
And always got every nickel he could from Middle Tennessee State University for many, many years.
And rightly so. The Mass Communications building is named the John T. Bragg Mass Communications.
That's right. It's a great place to be.
Makes me think of one more story, and that's about the visit of Governor McWhorter and your father to the Livestock Pavilion on the MTSU campus.
He brought Cotton Ivy, I think, told the story, and a number of other people that in the dead of summer they went over to MTSU's agriculture facility on the campus for a show, for a horse show or cattle or something. And when Governor McWhorter got in, I guess he'd been governor then, or maybe was still Speaker of the House.
I think he was governor then.
He noticed that the building was air conditioned. And so somebody said, he asked somebody, says, "How in the world, I built one of these at UT Martin, and I don't remember it being air conditioned." And they said, "Well, your representative's not John Bragg either." So
that he found out the difference in the governor and the chairman of the Finance, Ways and Means.
That's exactly right. Which one could get some air conditioning, which one maybe didn't have that much pull.
Well, you bring a great heritage to this office. You've just done a great job, Tommy, Mayor Bragg, for the past 12 years serving our community. Any final reflections that you have as we wind up our conversation?
I've been thinking about that, John, and I think knowing the councils that served before me and the ones I served with and the mayors who served before me, I hope I've left as good a legacy for them, for the future of our community, as they have left for me. And I think a lot of people work to make me look good. I hope the work that I have done will make a lot of people look good in the future.
Wonderful thought. Thank you so much for your 12 years, for your service to the community in so many ways other than mayor as well.